Hello everyone, and welcome to this Hackolate tutorial. In this episode of the Hackolate tutorial, we'll be talking about how you can use the Hackolate Studio to compare and merge different data models. This is an important piece, right? Because Hackolate promotes the usage of Git for powerful and flexible model versioning, right? We don't have our own repository for this. We don't have our own system for this. We literally just leverage something that is proven and very, very powerful and flexible, which is the Git-based system. This allows us to have people collaborating on the model in parallel, right? So that you can have versions of the data models evolve in parallel side by side, right? Without blocking each other, without having this check-in, check-out based lock system where some people wouldn't be able to do any modifications on a model while someone else does, right? Git is much more advanced in that way because it allows us to facilitate different versions and merging them together as required. It also helps us to, for example, have additional governance processes on our productional systems, right? So for example, one thing that people use the compare and merge functionality for is to inspect a production system automatically using the Hackolate command line interface and comparing that derived or reverse engineered version of the model automatically with a previous version of the model that has been documented and validated. Right? So if those two versions of the model are not consistent, are not the same, then obviously we have a governance procedure that needs to be triggered to make sure that we understand why that would be the case. In the Hackolate comparison and merger processes, the subject can be different, right? So you can have a previous version of the reference model be the subject of the comparison or the merger. It could also be something that you reverse engineered, like I was just explaining, for governance purposes, or it could be something that has been evolving in Git in separate branches, for example. In the Hackolate toolset, you will find that there's two distinct views. There's a comparison view with two panes side by side, and there's a merger view where those two panes will be complemented with a new middle pane that suggests a resulting merged model. You can access this functionality from the welcome page or from the tools, and then the first thing that you will be asked to do is to select the left and right model that you want to be comparing. You can swap these easily, but the order of left and right is, of course, important because it will have an impact on what the difference actually means between those two versions of the model. The comparison screen will offer you synchronized scrolling capabilities, and the convention will be that the left-hand model is the basis, right? And so if the left-hand model contains fewer attributes than the right-hand model, then that will be an addition, right? There's something being added to the model. If the left-hand model contains more properties or objects than the right-hand model, then that means that there's a removal or a deletion, right? The comparison scheme will also identify moves, where things are positioned in the model and modifications to the properties of objects, obviously. Let's take a look at how that looks. Here you've got the comparison screen, right, with the two panes, and all the different differences are highlighted appropriately. And then you will also have the possibility to generate a delta model. A delta model is a formalization of the differences between the two versions of the model. It basically lists that in a structured way. And importantly, a delta model can be the basis for what is called an alter script, right? And an alter script is basically the schema instructions that you will fire at or execute on the target instances to go from one version of the model to the next version of the model, right? So it's altering the schema of that instance, right? So let's take a look at that. We'll switch to the Hackolate Studio here, just to illustrate the comparison functionality. I have a couple of models here, right? So I'll open them from my downloads folder here, right? So this is a MongoDB model that I have over here. And in that MongoDB model, I have made one change. I've added a property over here, right? So there's a score 1 that has been added. This is V1 of the model. In V2 of the model, you will see that there's another property that has been added here, score 2, right? And so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to compare those two versions of the model. So I'm going to go into my downloads folder, and I will be opening the V1 on the left-hand side and V2 on the right-hand side. I can switch this easily using the double arrow over here. Now I should quickly add here that these two models always have to be of the same type. You have to compare a MongoDB model with a MongoDB model. You cannot compare a MongoDB model with a Postgres model, for example, right? And then it was going to tell me, okay, what is the difference between here? You can see the synchronized scrolling at work. Score 1 is on the left-hand side, score 2 is on the right-hand side, but it's positioned at the same level because I'm matching on the internal IDs. What I've done here is I've copied the model and I've modified it, but if I would match it on the business name, then you will see that it does a different type of comparison. It's basically saying, well, this one's been removed and the other one has been added, right? So this is how you can have different variations of that comparison, and you obviously want to know exactly how that is done. When I push the generate delta model, I'll just open that up here for you because I've already prepared that. Over here, you will see what the delta is, right? So this is the delta model, which is basically a formalization of the differences between the two versions, right? Where this one has been added and this one has been deleted, right? The script, however, the MongoDB script, doesn't give me like these alteration commands or anything like that because MongoDB doesn't allow for that. Which is why I'd like to show you a different version of this comparison, right? So I'll go back into my downloads folder and I'll show you the Postgres version, right? So there's a Postgres version here that has a new property over there. And then there's another Postgres version over here that has a different property over there in the film table over there. Right, so if I now compare those two, right, I will get something very, very similar. But you will, if I then open the delta model, right, between those two Postgres models, you will see that it actually gives me an alter script. In the alter script, you will have the addition of the column and the dropping of the column, right? But the dropping of the column, because that's a potentially dangerous operation, is commented out. Right, so with that, I hope you have a good example of what the model comparison is like, and we'll switch back to our presentation here to go into how you can merge models together. Right, so how are we going to do that? Well, so very similarly, we're going to take two models, right, and we're going to be comparing those two, right? But there will be a third new pane that you will see in a minute here that is going to give me a merge proposal. Right, and I can select and unselect those proposals, and if there's any conflicts, then the merge proposal is going to use the right-hand model value. Right, and deletions are also going to be retained unless unchecked. Right, so the merging is done in this three-pane view here. So now I'm going to open up those two Mongo models again. Right, so V1 on the left-hand side and V2 on the right-hand side. And the comparison screen will show up, but at the top here, I can toggle and say, well, why don't we go into a merge scenario here? And then, again, if I switch to the different merging or matching strategies here, it will give me different results, right? So, and now it's going to tell me, okay, you can actually save this new model, right, in a merge model. Right, and that model can then be opened up, and you will see that there is a new version of the model that I can show you in a second here, and that new version of the model will have both of those properties in the entity over here, score 1 and score 2, as you can tell. Great, so with that, I'm going to wrap up this tutorial and show you a couple of reading materials. Obviously, these are always interesting and important, but I would highly recommend that you take a look at these. And with that, I'm going to wrap up this tutorial and wish you a very good rest of your day. Thank you very much.